Welcome to the Heal with Cat show.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's Heal with Kat show. My name is Kat. I am your host. I'm a family constellation therapy facilitator, intuitive medium, and fellow cycle breaker. Welcome to our brand new series on the Heal with Kat community where we're archiving the podcasts. We are archiving the interviews, all of the solos that I've done for the last 3 years because it's time for a new chapter. And starting on December 1st, we are officially a Q&A show for good. We're making this change kind of quickly because so many of you wanted more clarity and more support and more free ways to get help. And I feel like in today's world, I took that really freaking seriously. So things are feeling a little heavy at the end of 2025. I feel like we're all just hanging on by a thread, myself included, but why not switch things up? The podcast was a good thing for 3 years. The interviews were amazing. I met some of the most amazing people. And also now you get to binge 100 plus of all of those episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or Substack, which is new, by the way. And we get to do something a little bit more of service and free. So now we have the show. This week, we are doing a special themed show around the topic of death and dying, which can be a taboo topic for some, but it's actually something I think is one of the most fascinating conversations I can have. And I'm kind of leaning into the idea of doing themed shows so I can give y'all a chance to get clarity on certain topics, although it won't be themed every week, but make sure you're on my email newsletter and you're getting my emails because I'll announce theme shows when they come up. But also, if you're somebody who has a topic on mind that you really want to hear about, or if there's a topic that is really socially popular right now and you want to get somebody's perspective on it from the psychological, trauma-informed lens and the spiritual lens, because that is really my bread and butter, just go to catdow.com/ask, ASK. We'll put it in the show notes below. You don't have to submit a question. You can just submit to see if we can touch on a certain topic. So it's really kind of an open forum. It doesn't have to be spiritual and it doesn't have to be about trauma. We get everything from women wanting more clarity on their spirit babies to something like this week's show around death and dying. And I really wanted to lean into this topic because recently I was having a conversation with a really good friend of mine about death, and she was kind of just opening up to me about her deep fear of it and her lack of understanding of it. Her being raised in a Catholic home, just like I was, or a religious home, and not really understanding the point of how certain religions, specifically Catholicism, speak about death and what it really means. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the intro today, but I was raised in a Catholic home, and my understanding of heaven and death was very confusing. And then when I became an intuitive medium, and by the way, I was my own best skeptic. I was skeptical about my own abilities for like the first 2 or 3 years that I did this work. And then I was like, okay, at some point you need to trust that like this is actually for the highest and best good of everyone. And like you can actually do this. But being an intuitive medium, I've been on a very interesting journey around death for myself. So this week's show is going to get spiritual, but we're also going to be really grounded in it together as well. And we're going to have a longer intro. This is like a half solo, half one live caller today, which I'm really excited about. But we got so many submissions of people with all different kinds of questions, from wanting to come on live to just wanting to submit. So for the show this week, I'm going to do, like I said, a longer intro, just kind of generally answering a lot of the questions that I got. And then we'll get into this week's live caller as once we're done with that. So let's dive in. The hardest truth about death is that it's something that we will all do. That word, that sentence, that combination of words triggered me for a long time because there's so much unknown about how we die, why we die, the timing of our death. And death has touched all of our lives in some way or another, whether it's been traumatic or whether it's just been, your grandparents passed of old age. Everyone's kind of touched it in some way. And what I've learned through my studies of death and dying is that death is actually the most human thing that we can do. There are two major initiations that we go through in life, and they bookend our lives, and it's the initiation of birth and the initiation of death. And birth is moving from spirit to physical form to human, and the initiation of a new lifetime. Whereas death is the initiation from physical form back fully to spirit. And in many ways, I've come to personally feel and learn that our home, our true home, is actually on the other side in spirit form. And what happens when we come to Earth is that we're like on vacation, or these days feels more like a boarding school. So, we're not here for long, but in the grand scheme of things, we do so much work. So, we're not here for a long time in the grand scheme of things, but yet, and we do so much while we're here. And like I said, I had a ton of submissions of people needing clarity on the spiritual and the metaphysical questions about what happens after death, why some souls get quote unquote stuck on earth, when do our life reviews occur, can we help our loved ones cross over if they need it? And most of all, the biggest question I got is why does the process of death seem so inconsistent and disorganized? So I'm going to try to give as much clarity and context as possible about what I know to be true first. Because really, what I think about this episode is that you just have to take what resonates and leave the rest. I've seen a lot of mediums on TikTok say things I've never heard before. I've been to mediums say things about death I've never heard before. And my gut reaction isn't to make them wrong. Really, it's just to get curious, to decide, do I align with that belief or not? And I really do think that spirit, our guides, our ancestors, even, they will show us what they know we can handle or take in about the other side in increments because it is such a big topic. It is so potentially overwhelming for the human brain to think about. And so, if we don't have the internal space to take in a lot of what happens on the other side, then we may be only shown a sliver of what we can handle. And it's always for the highest and best good of the person that they're guiding, or in our highest and best good. But I've also seen some mediums shame other mediums online about what they're saying, what they know to be true. And I've seen big mediums on TikTok specifically, like saying completely opposite things about their beliefs of mediumship and what happens. And so, to that I say, who fucking knows? Who's to say that somebody with 1 million followers and has been doing this for 10 years is more right than somebody who has 100,000 followers on TikTok and has been doing this for, 5 years? I don't know. Like who's to say who's right or wrong? I mean, experience does say a lot, but I think at the end of the day, there's enough information out there for people to form their own opinions. I also think that it's a very human thing for us to want to be very binary in our ways of thinking, where most of what happens outside of Earth, whether you want to call it spirit or space or both, everything happens on a spectrum. Life is incredibly nuanced. And it really bugs me when people get online and they say, this is the truth, and this is the only way that this can be the truth. It's like, okay, well, there's things that are true, like murder is wrong, but there's also things out there that are true on a spectrum. And I think that we need to learn discernment and we need to be open to hearing other people's opinions and then just decide what we believe. So if you're looking to make something very black and white or very binary, that's more of that's more of society's confusion and people trying to make sense of the chaos rather than embracing the gray area, which is what life is. So, I want to share with you some things that I absolutely know for myself to be true around a lot of the questions that you asked me in your submissions for this episode. And so, one of the things I know to be true is that there are multiple entry and exit points for one soul in a lifetime, meaning There are up to three opportunities for a soul to come to Earth and to reincarnate and come into a physical form. And equally, there are up to three exit points to leave the physical form as well. All of these entry and exit points, they're all different, they're all unique, they're all nuanced. And although the soul and making the soul's blueprint and choice has a lot to do with it, another huge part of it is human circumstances that they're coming into. Maybe a baby had planned to come in October, and now things changed in their parents' lives, and there's a better time to come in 6 months later. Like, we take it so personally when we don't get pregnant right away, or when we don't have this thing that happens right away, or when a death happens in an untimely way for us. But actually, what's happening is in the soul's highest and best good. This is the time where the soul can come in at the time that's best for everybody involved. And that's been one of the most healing things for me around motherhood, but also around death, is trusting that not only are there going to be things that we don't fully understand, there's a mystery about spirit, there's a mystery about God that we should be more humble and realizing we don't have to have all the answers because we're not going to. But also just realizing that, like, if I set the intention that I want the highest and best good for everybody, that might shift timelines a little bit. That might. And timelines, they're existing. There's so many timelines, and they're all, a lot of them are set with intention. So I'm getting into a little bit of the like quantum physics of time and and all that. But just know that there's multiple times for souls to come in, multiple times for souls to leave. I also know that when humans die, when we pass, the soul will exit the body almost immediately. And that soul might choose to stick around in the in-between of worlds, or what we would call the middle world, and until it's ready to go to the light. And this could be by the choice of the soul, because maybe there's still lingering healing that needs to happen, or maybe the soul still wants to hang around the family for connection. But ultimately, there is an aspect of the soul that passes, choosing whether it wants to immediately go through the cleansing light up to a more heavenly dimension, or if it wants to stick around for a little bit. Not everybody goes straight up to heaven, I guess. Or hellish, depending on what you believe in life, and depending on what you did in that life. Spirit says, and as I was kind of channeling through answering your questions, which is always really fun because I love connecting with Spirit, but Spirit was guiding me that most of the time, people who commit heinous crimes will be, and this is their word that they used, quote, escorted down to a lower dimension place, but not always. And this is where we need to let go of that binary thinking and really trust the highest and best good of every single soul, that they are being guided. A lot of this depends on soul lessons and what is in the best of the soul's experience, meaning what does this soul need to know or experience before going off to the next place. Um, Guides are one of the most fascinating topics I've ever studied in terms of my spirituality and my spiritual practice. Understanding their role, understanding why they're here with us, why they choose us, potentially why we choose them, why we call on them. It's one of the most beautiful, unconditional experiences that we can have with spirit. And if you find that you're really curious about guides in general, because I'm going to bring them up a lot during this episode today, because they're such an integral part of the death and dying experience, and your ancestors too, I highly recommend doing meditations about connecting with your guides. My favorite is Lisa Beachy on YouTube. Lisa, Beachy. We'll ask Bessie, my podcast producer, to drop it in the show notes. But yeah, it's a really interesting way to kind of get outside of your head and connect with something more loving, and these guides and these teachers that are just always waiting to help us out. That's literally their job, is to guide us. So I just want to pop that in there before I get on to the next thing. A lot of you wanted to know about what happens when a soul gets stuck of the in between, and when a soul is in like this middle world, and what happens with connection when they're in this middle world. And honestly, you can connect with your loved ones who have crossed over when they're in middle world just as much as you can connect with them when they fully cross over into the light. To my understanding, the frequency of the connection can exist in any dimension and at any time. But what's common is that people will feel their loved one around them a lot, and then all of a sudden they won't feel them around so much anymore. That could be, is not always, but it could be an indication that it was time for your loved one to go through the light, to cross over, to go meet their guides and ancestors, and to do the life review and to really move forward as a soul, because there is a journey that the soul needs to go through once it passes, once it leaves its physical form. When someone dies traumatically and unexpectedly, this was a big question as well, the soul immediately vacates the body. And it may take time for that soul to realize that they've passed and that they've come out of their physical body. If a soul gets stuck, which can also happen, it might create confusion. So, yes, to answer many questions that were submitted, you, as a spiritually enlightened human being, you can help your loved ones cross over. I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I do know some of my clients who have had ancestors show me that it's either because they were stuck because the death was traumatic, and they were confused. I had one person's grandfather tell me that he wasn't ready to cross over yet because you do still have free will as a soul. And then there's been other instances where I've been a part, this was a long time ago, but I was a part of a group mediumship event thing. And this actually came up, and the medium said there's a larger reason for why they haven't gone fully through the light yet, and you don't need to concern yourself with it. As someone's opinion, but it always stuck with me, and I never had to ever think about it until I was writing notes for this episode. But there are a lot of really gifted humans that can help your loved ones find the light and the courage to connect to love, so they can cross into the light and they can continue on their journey. I personally don't know anyone who does that. However, if you do know somebody and you love them and you've had great success with them, please drop it in the comments below so that other people can see this, if they're curious as well. I also know that when our loved ones cross over into the light and they finally get through that cleansing, they get to meet with their guides, their ancestors show up, they're welcomed back home, and then their guides pull them for their life review. And a life review is something that we will all do. And we will not only review our life's major moments that our guides feel we need to reflect on, but we're also held accountable for how we treated others. And that's really where a lot of the teachings and the lessons come from. It's not uncommon for people to come to me for a family constellation session or when I was doing readings and be angry that they never got to tell their dad how much they hurt them, or they never got to tell their dad that they were angry and like work it out with their dad. Or it's a lot of dad, but there's been some mom stuff too. And so like, yes, we'll always validate that. We'll always validate that your parent or your loved one didn't always act in their best self and may have harmed you or hurt you, may have left wounds behind that you're still wrangling with. And also, you need to trust that from the spiritual perspective, your dad already knows what he did, but more so, he knows how it made you feel. Because the one thing that spirit has always showed me about our ancestors crossing over is that as humans, we spend so much time trying to move through resentment and get justice for the wrongdoings that were done to us. But once they go through their life review, their guides, they will show that soul not only what they did, but they will make them feel the pain that was done to others in a way that is appropriate, because even in spirit form, like humans, we have to feel it to heal it. The feeling is the lesson. Now, if in hearing that, you feel very worried about your family member and their life review because you know that they cause a lot of pain, I want to say that it's very empathetic of you. And also, this is a yes and statement. I'm the queen of yes and. We need to release this idea that it will be painful or harmful to them. Because one of the greatest promises that we have when we die is that the other side is love. That our guides, they may be direct and very straightforward if they need to be, but it will be done with love. And nothing is done to harm any soul on the other side. Plus, think about it this way. Our guides know how to guide the people they've done for potentially lifetimes, okay? Especially this one. Our guides know how we learn best, how we take in information best, and what helps us grow. So, your guides, with all of the experience they have, they are going to know how to help your loved one process the pain that was done to other people and process their own pain. So we have to remember not to project our fears onto other people and remember that once they cross over into the light, they're in God's hands. They're surrounded by love. They are truly held, and we can trust that that is real because we can trust God and we can trust in spirit. And I think that's something that is deeply a personal belief, but something I also believe more people could have faith in. Hey everyone, it's Kat popping in during today's show to tell you about my age mapping 3-day mini course. Have you always wanted to finally understand how your family's past may still be affecting you today, and you're not really sure if you want to fully invest in a family constellation therapy session? Trust me, I get it. This is why I created this self-paced course that will guide you through 3 days of really powerful tools. On day 1, you'll start with my infamous ancestral subconscious meditation. On day 2, you'll do an exercise to spot repeating trauma at certain ages in your family lineage. And on day 3, we'll do a deep dive into epigenetics so you can understand the science, the nature, and the nurture of how you became who you are. You'll leave with clarity, healing, and a true sense of freedom to step into your role as cycle breaker. It's just $35, and all you have to do is go to catdow.com/age map or visit the link in the show notes below. All right, let's get back to today's show. What happens after our loved ones go through a life review is that they are not only freed, in a sense, from the burden that they carried from what they did to others and what was done to them, but then they learn certain lessons as a soul where they can now become more of service, not only to their loved ones, to you, but to other people in their soul groups who are also going through the same things. And if you're like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm gonna get there. But there's a lot of good that can come from our loved ones facing the pain that they experience and that they may have projected in life. If you're somebody who really wants to try to connect with your loved ones who have crossed over, I have my ancestral subconscious meditation. It's on Insight Timer. Both downloading the app and the meditation are free. My ancestral subconscious meditation is just a premium track on my page. We'll link it below in the show notes, but you can also just go to Insight Timer and type in my name, Kat Dow, and my profile will come up. And you can use that meditation. I created that meditation for you to tap into your ancestral lineage and connect with whoever wants to come forward, to connect with a pattern, to relive an experience of love and support from your ancestors. It's a very, very supportive meditation, and it's the one that I do in most of my in-person events. And then we do a little mediumship after. But if you wanted to do that and try that, here's my best advice. And please take this seriously because you want to have the best outcome of the meditation. You want to make sure that your nervous system is very highly well regulated so that you can be a clear channel. You're going to want to set an intention with your loved one, with your higher self and your guides, and let them know that you'd like to connect, and see if they need help or if they want to connect. And remember that there is divine timing for everything, even for the free will and choice of a soul. So go in with an open mind and see what you get. And if you still have questions about what you got in the meditation, just submit a question to Heal with Cat community. You can go to catdow.com/ask and let me know that you did the meditation and you want some help kind of ironing through what you saw. And I'll be happy to do that in a live call if you want to join in on the Zoom room. The last thing I want to say about life reviews is that as far as when the life review happens, I believe that it's only once the soul crosses through the cleansing light and meets their guides and their loved ones in this like other dimension. So the timing of it, I think, is pretty specific. Before we get into our live caller today, I want to share a little bit about my experience with death and how I was really pulled into studying this topic for so long because it's not something that I ever thought I would be really interested in. And yet, due to life circumstances, here I am almost 10, 15 years later, still fascinated and still learning a lot. So I'll share a little bit of my personal story and then we'll get into the live caller. A couple of years ago, I did a past life regression here in Denver with a woman named Christine. And I wanted to find somebody who was very well versed in Brian Weiss's method of past life regression. If you're really into past life regression or you're really curious about it, Brian Weiss has a meditation, a past life regression meditation on YouTube. You just type in Brian, Weiss, past life meditation and you can do it. I've done it multiple times. I'm going to bring it up today, something I found in a meditation, but it's really, really fascinating. So I could do a whole other, I think I did a pod, I did think I did like 4 podcast episodes on past life regression actually. So go back into the archives of like March of 2024 and April, May, June. Yeah, like that whole spring right before summer era. But in one of these lifetimes that I went into in this past life regression with Christine or Kristen, she had me go into a lifetime where I was in rural area of France and I was an old lady and she asked me if I would feel comfortable going up to right before I died. Growing up as a kid, I had a very deep fear of dying. And I had this really bizarre fear that I was going to die at 19 years old. And I remember waking up on my 20th birthday and thinking, I didn't die. I can't believe it. I was so convinced I was going to die. And then I learned later on in a past life regression meditation that I did with Dr. Brian Weiss that I had a previous life where I died at 19 very traumatically. And learning that brought a lot more peace to my life around death. I also did a past life regression a couple of years ago here in Denver with a woman named Christine, where she had me go into a lifetime. She had me go up to the moment right before I died. I have the craziest experience where I know what it feels like to die. I swear to God, I know what it feels like to die after this experience. Like it was so mind-blowing. I was laying in a bed. I had a like white nightgown on. I had long gray hair. I can see myself in the cabin where I lived. I lived in France. My daughter and her husband and her 2 kids, her 2 sons, were sitting next to the bed waiting for me to die. I could feel that she was pregnant. And in that moment, I knew that she, my daughter in that life, was my youngest sister in this life. And I got to share that with her because she's open to this stuff. And it was really interesting, down to like knowing her name in that life, which was crazy. I didn't even know my own, but I knew hers. I could see the fireplace on. I was in these wool blankets, but I was kind of like laying on top of the bed. And I had this realization that at any moment I could take my next breath and it would be my last. So I took a breath and I decided, okay, on my next one, it's going to be my last one. Took another breath and I was out of my body. And I was like in this space thing where like it was purple light and stars and it was like very middle worldy, very like in between worlds, but I was also hovering right over my body. And I knew that that wasn't me, but I knew that was me. It wasn't me anymore, but it was me within a moment, an instant, a blinking of the eye. And I remember looking at that body and being relieved that I was out of that body because it was weighing me down. And I just remember thinking, I still have my personality. I still have my own thoughts. I still have my own feelings. Like I can totally feel me, but I'm just not in a body. But I couldn't see anything. It was so fucking crazy. So now I just say like I feel like I know what it's like to die and it's actually not scary at all. Like I didn't even need to have a near death experience. I just re-experienced death through a past life regression and it was fucking insane and super interesting and it's something I will never forget. But that really eased a lot of my fears around death as well, because I was like, oh, and I'm just me. And then we went on to something else, and I don't even remember what happened after that. Um, but this fear of like, there was this interesting part of my life where, like, around 19 or 20, there was a lot of theme around death, that past life fear that I was going to die at 19. And then when I was 20 years old, my Aunt Michelle and both my paternal grandparents died within 13 months of each other. And it was a very difficult time for our family. And death was on the mind. And before that time, I had never really lost anyone close to me. I had lost a PE teacher who died in a helicopter accident coming back from Vegas when I was like 10. but I wasn't close to them. I didn't have a relationship with them. They were just a person that I saw a couple times a week that I liked, but it wasn't like a loved one. And so losing three people that I adored, still adore, but adored with all my heart in such a short period of time really kind of got me obsessed with death. And because it was so chaotic and the deaths were so chaotic, I started asking the hard questions. What happens when we die? What is it like to die? Where do we go when we die? And I mentioned this earlier in the intro, but I was raised in a very Catholic home, and I was raised under the belief system that there was this purgatory where our souls would go to kind of wait for God to deem us worthy of going to heaven. And for me, that never seemed fair. I remember there were a lot of things growing up around Catholicism that I would just sit quietly in church as a kid and go, are these people serious? This is not how it works. But I was gaslit so much that eventually I just like stuffed my own opinions down to the point where I remember being like 10 years old. We were in La Quinta in the desert in California. We were driving home from the gas station. I remember asking my dad, and it's like reliving the moment as I think this. I was in the front seat and I said, Poppy, which is dad in French, do babies live in heaven before they get birthed? I was picking up on spirit babies. Like I was literally asking these questions as a 10-year-old. There's like a lot of things that felt very like not true for me, very young as a kid. So naturally, when I lost my family members, I did not rely on religion to give me the answers of where they were. I started researching near-death experiences. I started seeing mediums and psychics who were connecting me to my grandparents almost immediately after they passed. So was my uncle. And my uncle actually introduced me to a medium named Wendy Tuttle. I did one reading with her. She told me so much wildly accurate information about my grandparents and my aunt. And it really just woke something up inside of me that I was like, I feel like I know this, but like it's still a little hazy. So those experiences really catapulted me into a lot of my spiritual beliefs today, including death. And I had this really interesting experience right after my grandfather, my jiddo, which is grandfather in Lebanese, when he died. He would come visit me in the form of an owl. And the first time I ever saw it was maybe a couple of months or maybe a few months after he died. And I saw a white owl on the road when I was driving home to a friend's house. The owl happened to like land on the road as I was like driving by it. I slammed on the brakes and I look at this owl and I'm in dead eye contact with this owl. I got full body chills and I said to my friend, that's a sign from my grandpa. I just knew I felt my grandpa with me. I went back to her house and I Googled the meaning of a white owl and I found a website that was describing what white owls mean in different cultures. And it said in Middle Eastern culture, and I'm half Lebanese, and these were my Lebanese grandparents and ancestors. It's a sign from a loved one that is crossing from one realm to another. So, do I think my grandfather hadn't fully crossed through the light right away? Potentially, because the signs of the white owl happened for a long time. And then all of a sudden, it was gone. My uncle and I had multiple mediums, and my cousin had multiple mediums who confirmed this for us without ever bringing up the owls. Every single time, the owl is your grandfather, the owl is your grandfather, the owl is your grandfather, or my uncle's father. So there's just a lot of things that like I've experienced. There's so much more, but we just don't have time for it. But there's so much more I could share with you about what I've experienced with death. And also there's a lot of things I love to keep to myself just because they're so personal with me and my loved ones. But there are signs for life after death everywhere. Everywhere. You just have to be open and willing to see them. If any of this is really interesting to you, there's two books that I highly recommend reading. And the first one is the first book that I read that really changed my life in general. And it's called Dying to Be Me by Anita Moorjani. And the second one is called Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. And I want to touch on Journey of Souls for a second because as impactful as Dying to Be Me was, the science, the psychology, and the spirituality of Journey of Souls by Michael Newton is a book that not only soothes so many of my fears of what happens when we die, but it actually encouraged me to lean into the topic more, and it made me a better medium. 1,000,000% made me a better medium. So if that's something that you're interested in, read the book. He was a counseling psychologist, and Dr. Michael Newton was a counseling psychologist and hypnotherapist that was best known for pioneering something called life between lives. It's a regression therapy. And Journey of Souls is his best-selling book. And it's basically where he presents decades of case studies where he's hypnotized his clients and he's asked them certain questions about the afterlife, about soul groups, and about the process of choosing new lives. And he documented all of it and wrote this book. So it's a book that I pick up at least once a year. And again, I love it because it bridges psychology and spirituality and it really offers a map of like what our soul's evolution is. So, in saying all of that, yes, the topic is uncomfortable. Yes, it can be scary. And my hope is that after today's show, you feel more at ease and more peace about it, more accepting of what this experience is. And don't forget that if the show brings up a question that you have around this topic, even if we're not doing a death and dying theme show in the future, you can always submit your questions anytime you want. Just go to catdow.com/ask ask or visit the link in the show notes below. You can ask a question about anything you're moving through and get a both psychological and spiritual perspective of your situation. And remember, it's just a perspective. It doesn't mean I have all the answers. But if that kind of perspective intrigues you, you've come to the right place. So let's take a deep breath, grab your tea, get cozy, snuggle up. Let's get into our very first question with our live caller, Bessie. Bessie, welcome to the Heal with Kat show. What is your question?
Hi, thank you so much. I actually have two questions, if that's okay. They kind of go hand in hand. So the first one is, why does it feel like when it comes to death or loss, when it rains, it pours? And the second is, if you can't see your vision, like your quote unquote soul's purpose, what you believe your soul's purpose to be, why does it feel like you're gonna die? I guess that's the best way that I can like ask that question. Can I share a little bit of the backstory to just kind of like clarify why those two tie together?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So let's break it down into the two. We'll do each of them individually. So start with your first one and give us the backstory, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So the first one was, why does it feel like when it comes to death and loss, like when it rains, it pours? So I luckily, up until that point, didn't have a lot of like death in my life. But then I started realizing like when bad things happened, it always felt like it came in twos or threes or like more bad things would happen. So in this particular case that I'm thinking of, 2 years ago, my dad passed. And very shortly so after, it was maybe like 3 weeks, my senior manager at work passed away. And then 3 days later, my friend at work also committed suicide. And then 3 days later, my friend who had cancer passed away. And what's crazy is like, it was four instances of death that were happening. And also in between all of that, everything that was happening overseas in Israel and Palestine was also happening. And it just felt like, holy shit balls. Like I don't know what to do. Like it just felt like the world, the earth, my world was like imploding. And what was really crazy about the last three in my personal life is that they were all people that I knew from the same place. So it wasn't just me that was being affected. They were all coworkers. And every single person that I was working with was also affected by this and everything going on in the world, you know? So it just felt like too much of a coincidence. And I've just always thought about like after this moment, when it rains, it pours, is what it feels like.
Mm. Yeah, I am so sorry for the loss of your father, first and foremost, because that is an ancestor. That is somebody that brought you into this world and the loss, I'm sure. I hope you're getting some support with that, by the way. Have you looked into grief counseling with that? And how do you feel about his passing?
I feel okay about it. I have a coach that I work with and I feel settled in it. I actually feel more connected with him now than I ever did previously because we were actually estranged and we hadn't talked in maybe 15, 20 years, but there were a lot of things that popped up after his passing that I was like, oh, he actually really did care and he was here and he knew what we were up to and my sister and I and like yeah, so I feel actually like really at peace with that part.
I just got goosebumps when you said that because I could feel that for you. That's amazing. I mean, that does happen often where we will have loved ones that we may not have been super close with and when they were alive, but once they pass, I was talking about this a little bit in the intro of today's show, but there's so much lessons and so much learning that happens when a soul passes that they go through, especially in their life review, where then they kind of realize, oh my gosh, I didn't have the opportunity to be there for my loved one, and now I can, and now I can do it in a more loving way. So I'm so happy to hear that you had that experience because that's wonderful. In terms of this is going to be kind of intuitive as well, but in terms of the three people passing in the same uh, circle, it feels coincidental in some way, but it also feels much larger around collectively like things that we're moving through as a planet right now in terms of endings and beginnings. Um, are you comfortable with the idea of like souls agreeing to leave Earth at a certain time due to certain things? Does that seem resonant to you, or are you just like, fuck no, I'm not into that idea?
I'm really into it, and that's
Okay.
actually one of the reasons why I asked what my second question was. But when it comes to also the first question, it just felt like there was like a death angel that came. That was just like, all right, time to like.
Mhm.
And even though I believe in soul contracts and whatnot, it just felt like so wild. Like it
Yeah.
was like, how is it that it's three, three, and three with three people? You know, like
Yeah.
there was just something that, yeah.
Let's talk about it from a nervous system perspective and the psychological, and then I'll kind of take you into the spiritual because there's a bunch of stuff that's coming up. So I kind of want to like iron this through of my thoughts in a succinct way. From a nervous system perspective, and even from a psychological one, when we experience one loss, we can become sensitive to loss in general, but then when you go through as many as you experience in your field of people around you in such a short period of time, it's like opening a bunch of wounds and not always having them close right away. Like that's death brings up so much grief in us and so much sometimes internal confusion about why or how or the timing or, all of the questions, the real questions that you're having. So I just want to validate for a moment your sensitivity to loss in general, even with your second question, the loss of self, which we'll get into. But our emotional and our somatic systems are already in a state of grief. So just every loss that kept happening was just more amplified by the next one. And it's common that grief will have a very cumulative effect like that because we're not just grieving each individual person, we're actually grieving the meanings that those people held, right? So we're grieving our identity to them and how we based our identity off of our relationship with them, or maybe what we believed about the world when they were alive and their death shakes something up inside of us. And if it's work related, it could be you subconsciously or you feel in your body the sense that things are going to change. And if our nervous system is not adapted to change very well, myself included, we're gonna have a hard time with that. So it really is actually bringing up more of this like sense of safety and this order in the world that gets deeply shaken. And it's not just sadness. Death is disorienting. And so it
Mm.
makes sense to me that you would be feeling like you're walking through fog or feeling like I'm not really sure why all of this is going on, considering all of the loss that you have experienced. Now, in terms of grief, I went through a huge loss last year myself with my brother-in-law, and it was very disorienting for everybody. And what I learned about grief in that experience is that grief, it impacts our perception of time. And so the brain, what your brain does in order to survive is it starts to cluster all of the tragedy together because it's just one big wave that's hitting you. And so my suggestion is for this specific question, if you're feeling like the change from those losses are still impacting you and you're still struggling with the security that you feel, there's an opportunity to do some body work around this. It could be
Mm.
some somatic work. It could be working with a somatic experiencing practitioner, which I know an amazing one that I can share. Her name is Tammy Chow. But there's just an opportunity here to, and what you're doing, by the way, and I know I'm doing a lot of talking. I'm going to pause and check in with you, but what you're doing is when we have these emotions from these big impactful traumas that hit us, they live in our bodies and we need an opportunity to process them. And so
Mm.
when you're going through the somatic experiencing, you're allowing yourself to move through all of these emotions. And what you end up finding at the end of this is more acceptance that sometimes people die in clusters, that sometimes we're going to lose people unexpectedly, more acceptance for how we process our grief and how we move through things. I think acceptance is like one of the big things it's one of the hardest lessons that we have to learn about life, about death, is it is a part of life. It's going to happen when the soul, and this is hard, right? I don't want to say this in a blanket statement, but like there are many traumatic situations where people die where that was the soul's way of exiting. That was the way that the soul was meant to exit the human form. And it leaves all of us in the background of the death confused. So I just want to check in and see if any of that's landing for you and if you need more support around that.
Yeah, I feel like hearing that, the biggest thing for me is maybe because again, it ties into the second question, is maybe doing some more of that somatic work because I feel I can't say that I feel like inherently like fear or like danger in my body, but when certain things pop up, then that's my immediate go-to is like a very specific feeling like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Like something is going to happen and then I'm just gonna like be gone. And I think that a lot of it is still trapped in my body, because what happened in this first instance is like my dad passed and then I had to go straight back to work basically like very shortly so after and we were holding on to my sister and I were the next of kin and so we had to deal with everything. So it wasn't like stopping and slowing. And also coming from like an Asian family, I couldn't tell my grandparents that I live with. Like I it's still a secret that my dad had passed. And so that's all within me. And so I'm always like avoiding that conversation. And then when the death of my teammates and my senior manager passed, I was a leader in the space and I was a leader to 900 people.
Mhm.
And I couldn't, not that I couldn't, but it was hard to be the one that's supposed to be leading, feeling like I'm crumbling when my team is around me, also having a hard time. And of course, a corporate company brings in like the HR people, the people to help you, but like they're not really doing much other than just like you get 15 minutes to maybe cry for a moment and then you move on. And I'm just here holding the tears of so many people. And then the silver lining to all of this, or the golden thread, is that it pushed me to a place where I was like, I need to exit this job so that I can live my life's purpose. So I do see the golden thread there,
Mhm.
but it was very quick after all of that that I was like, all right, on to the next, like just gotta move.
Mhm.
And so I logically understand and know and feel settled in it, but I think maybe my body doesn't yet. And I think it's showing up in other ways is what I'm really trying to share.
Yeah, well, no, I was going to say that your sense of self is structured around your purpose. And if you're feeling like your purpose is changing, then your sense of self is going to start feeling the weight of that. Would that feel true for you?
Yeah, for sure.
So, spiritually, when your purpose vanishes, it's often because either a part of that purpose was fulfilled, or in some way your soul has gone through an upgrade, or your soul is ready for an upgrade. So, it's common that you won't find joy in the things that you thought you once wanted, not because those things aren't meant for you, like a family or a career. It means that the way that they're manifesting are going to change. Does that feel right for you?
Can you speak on that just a little bit more?
Let's say that you have this vision that you were going to create this kind of business. And in that vision, you also were going to have a husband and three kids. And all of a sudden, one day, you find that you are feeling numb to your emotions. You're feeling exhausted. You're feeling overwhelmed by life. You're feeling like your purpose isn't sparking you anymore. And you start to try to go back to that thing that motivates you, right? The vision of your life that's coming forward. And then all of a sudden, you don't feel that spark of inspiration anymore. Would you believe that it doesn't mean that you're not going to have them? It just means that it's changing a little bit. Because I would bet you more than anything, it's getting an upgrade.
I logically want to say I believe that.
Mhm. Yeah.
But in my body, the thing that's been coming up lately is if I don't see my vision, then why am I here? And if I'm not here, then I'm something's gonna happen, something terrible is gonna happen, and then I'm gonna die. And I think a part of the reason that I have this thought is because when I was going through the death of everyone, and all the bad things that were happening, I kept asking myself, like, I don't understand, like, why is this happening? These people are so good. Like, how is this happening? Why is this happening? And I was angry.
Mhm.
And one of my coaches, who is amazing, she was like, can we trust in the soul path? Can we trust in our soul contracts, our soul's journey? And can we trust that your vision and your purpose is so big that you simply can't go? And I think in that moment, I needed to hear it in that way for me to feel grounded in myself. But it's something that I've carried along with me. And I know that all of that happened because it really shook up previously everything so that I could leave and be in my greater purpose. I'm not meant to be in corporate. Come on now. Like, I'm meant to be supporting other people and doing the thing that I do now and helping to tell stories and be a creative.
Yeah.
But in the past, I would say like 3 months, I left my corporate job a year and a half ago now at this point, and I've been building the thing that is my vision, is my dream, is my purpose. And I got myself, I think, to a point of burnout, as you said. And a couple months ago, I just got to a point where I was like, what is going on? Like, this is not a life. What am I creating?
Yeah.
And, but it was this duality of like, but I love this and I feel like this is my soul's path. Like, and that's maybe a little egotistical of me
No.
to say, like, I believe my soul is here for this, you know? Like, we don't ever really know. But I mean, maybe we do, but it just feels so true. And so for me to have the thought that, like, if I know what my purpose is, then I'm still here. And this is why I'm still here and I'm still living on this earth journey. But then for that vision to go away, for it to, it wasn't even shifting. Like, I do actually have the vision and the dream of like having the man and the puppy at 6 p.m. in the, on a Saturday, having dinner with like my best friends, and it's just joyful, and this big company that I'm building. Like, I have had all of that in my mind. But then when I was going through this, whatever this is, the past 3 months, it didn't feel like I even had the vision. I couldn't see the man, I couldn't see the dog, I couldn't see the friends, I didn't even see the business. I was just going through the motions, and I'm like, if that's not it, and that's what I've been building this past year for, this past 2 years, and so forth, like, it just feels scary. It feels like if that's not the thing, then why am I here?
There's this question coming up intuitively that I just need to ask. How much space do you have in your life for the things that you love?
I feel like I have a lot of space because I see my friends often. I also, like, the work that I do is the stuff that I love.
Mhm.
Like, it's creative. And I guess maybe I have to like separate the work and the creativity with like, I don't know, sitting and reading a book, like, or going and taking a Zumba class or something. That's not this, because I think I've attached me and my work together a lot.
That's what's feeling very resonant is that your soul is fatigued because you've attached your purpose to happiness. But there's so many other parts of life that are worth living that bring life so much joy that are not work. And this is a really common thing that a lot of women feel because we live in a time where we've never been more empowered to have careers and make money and have independence. Like it's a beautiful thing. And also, there's more to life than just bringing happiness through a relationship and through your career. And when we make our happiness conditional like that, we don't leave a lot of room for the magic of life, which actually brings us a lot of pleasure and joy. There's a lot of random things that happen every single day when we try something new that might inspire something in our career, or it might have us meet this random person on the street. But if we're not going out and living, truly living life and shaking things up a little bit in a way that feels good for our nervous system, then sometimes we live in the mundane and there's not a lot of option for magic to meet us in that. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And in this past couple of months in this exploration of like, why do I feel like this?
Yeah.
One of the things that kept coming up for me is like, I felt like I had to rediscover living
Yeah,
and
exactly. Exactly.
and what is fun.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult. I actually recently just went on a trip to Italy, which is my number one dream place, and it's so beautiful there. And theoretically, all of these magical things are happen when you like travel, which they did. But the first like 2 weeks, I had a really difficult time because I was like, why can't I find happy here? Like, why isn't the sun so sunny? Why isn't the food tasting like it should be amazing? Like it felt like I was resistant to living.
Mhm.
And that was wild in and of itself. But
Yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I feel like the glimmers and the sparkles are starting to come back within me because I feel like a inherently happy person. Like I know I'm happy and I'm a joyful person, but I'm looking around and I'm like, I'm not feeling fueled by a lot of the things that used to bring me joy.
Yeah.
So I think that's clearly this is a really big question. Like all of it's just all tying together.
Well, no, but it makes so much sense, Bessie, because when you tie your purpose and your happiness in life to a career and that career starts to change, it's going to shake up your sense of self and your stability in your life. So I think this is really just life doing a few things. I think this is life offering you an opportunity to find happiness and joy that is not conditional to a relationship or to a career. So like you said, go out and try a dance class, like go on a weekend vacation somewhere, even if you do have to work a little bit, like go out and explore, try something new, let life meet you, let the magic of life meet you somewhere new. I think there's that because it feels very circumstantial to your life right now. I also think there is a nervous system opportunity to learn what it means to hold certain emotions, to move through grief. Um, and if so, okay, let me ask you this question. Do you feel like you always have to hold everything on your shoulders, not just at your job, but like in life in general?
I feel like I used to, and I'm getting
Okay.
better at
Okay.
it. It's still definitely something that I have to really be like, how do I care and not carry?
Yeah. So, what we would call this is that your identity is shifting. Your identity is shifting, and as your identity is shifting, as you're being asked to move through life in a different way, your vision for life is changing. And what I was trying to say earlier is that you'll still have the husband, you'll still have the puppy, you'll still have the career, because I truly believe that what we deeply desire in our hearts, even if it fluctuates at times in life, is what we're picking up on, is what we're meant for. But give yourself a little bit of physical safety in your body to be in the in between right now, because all I can feel is look like it's going to make me emotional. And that's when I know it's like super intuitive, but like you're going through a massive upgrade right now, but there's not enough space in your life to move through the upgrade. You need more space in order to receive more. And right now, if your natural inclination is when things are scary, is to do more, that's an old pattern. That's a survival mechanism. So keep moving towards making more space in your body and your mind for new experiences of life or new relationships or new ideas. And that starts with the body, regulating the body. And then when the body feels open and free, then the ideas come in. I don't think it's about you not having the things you want. I think they're just changing. And they're, most importantly, they're changing because they're upgrading. There's like an upgrade that's happening. That feels very strong.
Yeah. When you were speaking, it reminded me of that movie Soul,
Yeah.
where he like eats the pizza and he's like, "Oh my gosh, everything is magical." And maybe what's coming up for me right now is like not tying my soul's purpose to a physical, tangible, like if I don't build the business, then I'm gonna disappear, but be more like the guy in Soul eating the pizza, being like what you just said, letting the magic meet you where you're at, like that. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
I think you just got to your own conclusion.
Yeah. Oh, it feels hard though,
Yeah.
because I do absolutely want to find that next thing to do, right? Like I want to do something to make myself feel better.
Mhm.
But when you talk about space and having more space to receive, I felt my gut just like drop, whatever that feeling was, and my heart being like, that's it, listen to her right now. Because I'm not so good at that part yet.
Well, when you are somebody that is always working on in service to others, and when you're always doing the doing, or if you have old patterns around caretaking or parentification, making sure that everyone's good and you come last, it's going to feel sticky. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel like life or death. And that life or death feeling is your nervous system. It's a part of your nervous system that's still learning to feel safe in all of this. The last thing I want to say too is it's winter now. It is the time of death and rebirth. You're a woman. You have a cycle. You move with the seasons. And so don't discount that either. Let the winter be a little deathy. Let the winter be a little empty. Let the winter be a little, okay, I'm learning how to make space. Because, and I shit you not, this is like, I denied this for a long time in my life. And then when I started working with it really did change my life. I didn't launch anything new in the winter time. I didn't take on new clients for a while. This was like 2 or 3 years ago. In the winter time, I did everything in the spring. And I swear to God, something about working with the seasons, it helps you move through life differently. So I don't know if you're open to that, but maybe just let winter be winter. Work on regulating your body, work on processing some of the emotions. I know I'm telling you more things to do, but I'm trying to say, like, create more space. And then in spring, when life, is lifing again, see if you can work with the magic and let that help you motivate you as well.
Yeah. Thank you. That actually feels really good.
Good.
Like it's like doing in the act of receiving. Like to do this thing, to actually do it is to give yourself space. It's like a funny
Yeah. It's the paradox of
oxymoron.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like every spiritual teacher tries to say, like, just sit there and receive, but you also have to do something like sit down and cross your legs. You also have to do something like breathing. It's like the paradox of life is the yes and. Yes, you have to do, and also you can learn how to receive in that. So I don't know, take that for what it is, but I'm really excited to see what you move through and hear about what you move through in the winter time and in this season because I think as soon as you start creating more space in your life, you're going to find your spark again.
I think so too. Thanks so much, Kat.
You're so welcome, Bessie. Thank you so much for calling in. All right, guys, that is the reality of life is sometimes we go through something as simple as struggling with our purpose and it bringing up fears of death. I've definitely felt that way in my life before when I couldn't connect to a purpose. I was really struggling with suicidal ideation. It was about 5 or 6 years ago when I was sitting on my bed and I said to my guides, if I've been through all of this pain and I don't know what it's for, why the fuck am I even here? And it's like the purpose came and the job came and like the things came. But I had to first make room for it in my life. And I had to be open to seeing where spirit was going to take me with it and sit back and not try to control my own agenda. And so I hope that if Bessie's story was resonant for you and if it really inspired you, let us know. Drop it in the comments below or come back next week, submit your own question, and we can chat about it more. Like I said, this show is an open forum for all of you to get the support that you need as you move through in life. And as you heard, as I was guiding Bessie, it's all about the psychological and the spiritual, although I will heavily rely on the intuition because I think it's just such a beautiful gift. But this is really a judgment-free zone for you to just be going through things. And sometimes we don't always need to arrive to a certain place. Sometimes we just need to come to our own truth. And I think you absolutely saw that with Bessie. Remember that you can submit your questions anytime you want, whether you want to stay anonymous and submit only, or if you want to come on live with me and chat, like with Bessie. This is a judgment-free zone for you to ask those looming questions that have been weighing on you and know that the Heal with Kat community is a safe space to bring them forward. I will always give my own perspective. You get to decide if it lands for you or if it doesn't. And that's your beautiful free will, discernment, and choice. Thank you so much for being here on this week's episode with the Heal with Kat show. I don't want to say, I want to say that differently. Thank you so much for being here on this week's Heal with Kat show, and we will see you next week for another one. Thanks, guys.